used in hydroponic culture and putting it in oyster bags and then dumping in your clam seed. And then that hydrotone, the physical presence would provide enough external support of that infaunal clam that they didn't have to actually be grown in sediment. So an oyster grower could actually slide these bags into their oyster growing gear and could grow quahogs out of sediment on their oyster farm, allowing them to diversify some of their product. And so we took those two technologies and we put together a process by which we could develop this demonstration farm network in those 6 states. And so we established an advisory committee, which is essentially the aquaculture extension agent for all 6 of the states. We had each of them identify candidate farms where we could put these demonstrations out. And we had up to 6 farms in each state were selected, and we had funding to provide them with the gear, the seed, and the technology and assistance to actually set this gear up. The farmer maintained the gear, and us in turn with our extension agent partners in each state would then go out on a regular basis and collect data on performance of whatever the product was in the gear that we had deployed. And then when all was said and done, if it proved to be successful, we proposed to have some on-farm demonstration projects, workshops, where farmers would visit farmers to actually view the gear. And then we're going to survey those farms after the fact to see if anybody actually implemented that technology. And so we started in 2014. We had high hopes and then realized that we were running into all kinds of unexpected permitting issues because it was totally new technology and none of the states had any way of actually figuring out how to deal with it. It took us a year to sort of get that all straightened out. So in 2015, we had 21 farms stretched across the 6 states. And then in 2016, I forgot to put the main data down. I'm not sure what Dana had going up there. And so I think it was somewhere around 18 farms in the second year. And so I'm not here to talk about the actual data results. We do have a couple of talks that we've given already on this idea of flip bags, and we are in the process of putting a paper together on that. But basically, what had happened on the West Coast was equally true on the East Coast, that we developed a much, much better product for the commercial half-shell market. And it was, we think, justifiable for charging. On the West Coast, they're getting up to 60% more per oyster for that custom-made Kushi oyster. So we found very significant, if you see on the right there, significantly higher cup depth to depth to length ratio, the cup ratio, on our flip bag systems as opposed to some of the more traditional culture technologies that were used. In terms of the bag culture of the quahogs, we weren't anywhere near as successful. I'm glad we trusted this out before we got too far down the road of trying to demonstrate it, because it turns out that the hydrotone product actually changed the clay source that they were getting their clay from, and their hydrotone pellets went from being negatively buoyant to positively buoyant, which then totally destroyed this whole idea of allowing us to grow clams in it. We tried some other stuff. We did pea stone one year, and each bag weighed about 75 pounds, and our growers refused to handle it. And then we have more recently found a negatively buoyant lava rock product that they also use for hydroponic production. And we started playing around with it this past summer, but it didn't get far enough to really make any kind of headway in terms of recommending it. And so in lieu of that failure with hydrotone, we then said, well, let's try something else. So we tried another technology, which is sort of a semi-rigid cap that we could put over our clam raceways to prevent predator invasion. And this was primarily aimed at people that are doing subtidal culture. We didn't really get down that road very far, so we sort of had to delete the clam end of the project just because of time constraints and technology changes. And so we've have been able to successfully demonstrate that flip bags are an effective tool. We've had a number of farm demonstrations to date, and we have more in planning. So we did one at our farm. We have a farm right on campus. We did one on our farm and had 22 attendees from 15 farms. Tessa did one down in Milford and is actually in the process of making a video of the technology so that we'll also be able to use that as an outreach tool. We did one at Mass Aquaculture Association, but I did fail to get the data from them. And then we have, and then Mike Chambers, I guess, was showing some NOAA people around and sort of showcased this as part of his dog and pony show that he did up in New Hampshire. So as a follow-up, we're going to be, as I said, Tessa and the Connecticut Sea Grants putting together a flip bag culture technique video. We've got a couple more on-farm demonstrations. And then what we're going to do when all is said and done is actually go back and do an assessment of all of the attendees of the workshops and try to get a feel for how effective this idea of an on-farm demonstration is in terms of stimulating thought processes and people actually adopting new technology onto their farms. So overall, it's a pretty well documented that demonstration farms work. In Rhode Island, we had 2 commercial farms demonstrating our technology the past 2 years, and this year they both have undergone permitting and are now installing their own commercial scale flip bag systems. So at least at the Rhode Island level, we know that we had 100% transition to that technology. And we're still working on getting feedback from other states. But what I really wanted to talk about is sort of the process. And this video sort of showcases what it's like to try to pull 6 extension agents together from 6 states, and then in fact have 25 farms or 20 farms actually try to participate. The coordination is, as you can see, exactly like this video is representing. It turned out to be really challenging to sort of get this all pulled together, but it worked, and we have had some success. So with that, I'll open the floor up for any questions.
Questions for Dale?
No? Good. See you later.
He's out of here.